Alright, how's it going, guys? So I just wanted to post a quick video. I've had a couple questions on the radiant heat panels that I built for these enclosures. I didn't do a very good job of explaining it during the actual enclosure videos, and I definitely regret not actually filming the process of making it. I don't know why I didn't. I just didn't. So I'm going to make this video today and hopefully try to explain exactly kind of how I did it. I don't have all the materials that I use, as the materials that I use are being used obviously for the panels themselves. So I'm going to try to do my best at explaining exactly how I did it so you guys can try it out as well if you like. So I guess first to start off with a couple of the materials. So the materials that I used is one pegboard. So this is pegboard right here. This is actually the leftover pegboard that I had, and I decided to make this kind of panel out of it. So pegboard you can find in your local hardware store, just in the plywood section, super cheap. So it's just this, and then I also bought sort of 1-inch thick foam. This was also from local hardware store. I found this piece. It was actually a 2 foot by 2 foot square. So I cut it in half and then cut that piece in half. So I had two 1 foot by 1 foot squares. And then I did the same thing for the pegboard. So I had two 1 foot by 1 foot squares of pegboard and foam. So the first thing I did after I did that, I drew a little pegboard for us so we can actually I can explain to you what I did. So I took the heat cable, so I used TERRA 25 watt heat cable. It comes in a few different wattages. I think it's 15 watt, 25 watt, and 50 watt. My pet store only had 25 watt, and I really think the only difference is the actual length of cable. So the cable that I use is 5 meters long. So I took this is obviously a smaller size, but I took the pegboard and I just snaked heat cable through it, just like this. So around the holes, up and down, and then I just taped, and then the plug part of it went this way. And I just used pieces of tape along the way to hold it in place, just like this. That's kind of a rough example, so hopefully you guys can kind of understand what that would look like. So that was the very first thing I did. And then the second thing I did was I took my 1 inch by 1 inch, so you have to picture this being cut in half, piece of foam, and I layered it with foil tape. So this is just your average kind of air duct tape that you find in the hardware store as well. And I took it and I lined the entire 1 foot by 1 foot square. All right, so now I have a pegboard with my heat cable snaked through it, just like this. And then I had my reflective piece of foam. So what I did from there is I took them and I glued them together, just like as well as you could picture that. Or sorry, I didn't glue them together, I taped them together. So at this point I had foam, reflective tape, heat cable, and then pegboard. Taped it all together into a little package. So the purpose of the actual reflective tape was to reflect any of the heat back down into the enclosure as best I could. And then obviously the purpose of the insulation was to absorb some of the heat, and I was trying to avoid as much as I could having heat get sent through the top of the radiant heat panel into the enclosure, the next enclosure above. I wasn't 100% successful. There's for sure some heat transfer, and it's super easy to tell because the top of this enclosure, I can take my heat gun right now, just right here. This is measuring at about 82 degrees. So the top of this, so I do have some heat coming through. Not a big deal at all. I'm not worried about that, and so that means I have some heat transfer from the bottom enclosure to the top enclosure. That's not a big deal. I'm going to zoom in onto the panels in a second, but just so you guys know, I do have them on a timer. So they come on around 7 a.m. and then they turn off around 10 p.m. So they're sort of like the kind of the sun in this environment. I don't run them all the time in terms of the day. They just come on for those that set amount of hours, which is kind of nice. It sort of builds the heat up over the day, and then it peaks in the afternoon, and then when they turn off, it takes a couple hours to shed all that heat. And they will be on a thermostat. It's probably not even necessary to have them on a thermostat, but of course you always want to have everything on a thermostat. My thermostat was coming in the mail, and then it got damaged in the mail, and so anyway, long story short, it's taking much longer to get my thermostat in the mail than it was supposed to. So soon I will get them in the mail, and I'll hook them to a thermostat. I'm just going to use one probe, so I'm just going to probe the top enclosure, and then if for something happens, the bottom one shorts out and overheats, it'll trip the top enclosure, because like I said, I do have some heat transfer. All right, so let's zoom in pull the camera a little bit closer and we'll take a closer look at these things. All right, so hopefully that's a good shot of the panel there. So you can see I've bolted it to the top ceiling there, and it's radiating heat down. So right now, this warm side of the enclosure is at 82. So these things, honestly, I'm so happy with them because they don't overheat this thing. I think the max heat I've ever seen these things get this side of the enclosure to would be like 83, 84 degrees at the most. When I get my thermostat in, I'll probably have it set to 85. So if it ever got to 85, it would just turn off. That way it's never going to overheat. But we can see it does a nice job of warming up this wood here. So that wood is 86 degrees, which is kind of nice. It's a nice little warm spot for them. Of course, they'll probably never use it because it's during the day. And then the inside of the enclosure is at about 85. Or sorry, the inside of the hide is at about 85, and of course the hot spot in there, because there is a heat mat still. So that's what they look like when they're installed. The actual radiant panel itself does get hot. Like this is probably 130, yeah, well 135 degrees. Any radiant heat panel, even one that you buy from a store, is going to get to 160, 170 degrees to the touch. But this isn't hot enough to burn anything because they're not laying on it. So that's the danger of a radiant heat panel, or sorry, of a heat mat. When boas are laying on it, they can get burned. They can't lay on this, so they can't actually burn themselves. So that's great. So I've been really, really pleased with them. Like I said, I will be setting them up on a thermostat, probably just right about there in that blank spot on my panel, and then they'll be extra safe. But for now, I'm very happy with the way they worked out. So if you do have any questions, let me know. I'll put a little bit extra description in the box below, and I'll post kind of the materials that I used to hopefully answer any future questions. But if you do, just let me know. And I will see you guys later.